Just a quick disclaimer that this deck's playstyle is quite slow, like it wins very slowly. I understand that being on the receiving end of this deck is typically not too fun. Personally, I really enjoy using painters, but if you are not a fan of the longer games, then this is a disclaimer that this deck is probably not for you. Hello, how's it going? Last Wednesday I won a 149 player tournament with Weather Painter. A couple of days later on Thursday I got top 8 in Duel Links Meta subscriber celebration event. This tournament had over 2,100 players and it was single elimination, which means once you lose your match you are out. In this tournament you could switch your deck in between games, but for most of the event I played Weather Painter. Then most recently I entered MCS 33 with this deck. I started off super well with a record of 5-0, but my final score had me missing top cut by a couple places. The build on the left is what I won the first tournament with. The build on the right is what I changed it to for the MCS. I will go over the changes that I made, but first of all I will talk about the skill I use. Balance is currently the most popular skill for this deck, because without it the deck is much more weak to having bad hands. Middle-aged mechs is nice because it makes Thunder a lot better and it definitely ups the deck's consistency. I like this skill, but it does have a few issues. For example, if you don't have Thunder in your starting hand, you're pretty much only playing with 2-spell and trap zones. Once you get into Thunder, that issue is then resolved, but I feel like Balance really does do a lot for this deck, because I would say the difference in consistency when playing Balance and not playing Balance is pretty big. If you are unfamiliar with how Balance works, I've put that up on the screen. The description of the skill in the game does not tell you about a few important things. Here's some further notes I made on why I really like Balance in this deck in case you want to pause and read that over. Otherwise, I'm now going to get into the explanation of my card choices. First of all, it's worth mentioning that the deck can be made 100% consistent with Balance. The way you achieve this is by having all your spells be continuous spells, and by not having any monsters apart from Snow and Thunder. I've written out the full explanation here. When I play Balance in 20 cards in this deck, I do one of these two ratios. In Balance Painters, I always play the least amount of monsters possible. Doing so increases the odds of drawing Snow and decreases the odds of drawing 2 monsters. The card types that you would rather be drawing 2 of is your spells and traps. In Balance, the popular thing to do is 3 Thunder instead of 2 Thunder and 1 Cloud. I think Cloud is good, but Thunder is the better one in the early phases of the game. Cloud is always my third favourite monster though, and I would recommend playing it here even if you miss copies of Snow. Here are some notes on all the painters if you want to pause and read more on what I have to say about them. One main thing I changed in my deck list before the MCS was the inclusion of Cloudy Canvas. I don't regret playing Cloudy. I think it can be a super useful card to have access to pull it from the deck when you need to. Here are some further notes of mine on Cloudy Canvas. One thing that I do that a lot of players don't do is I play free Thundery. I'm not completely sure on free Thundery, but it does make the deck a lot less weak to removal cards in the longer games. I felt like the third Thundery was more important once I was playing Cloudy. The reason why I say this is because let's say you only have 2 Thundery and you use the effects of your Thunder to send away Thundery to get Cloudy, then you only have 1 Thundery left. So if they do something to that Thundery, then you have no more Thundery. The reason why playing Cloudy makes a difference is because when you're not playing Cloudy, using Thunder to send away Thundery isn't a play that comes up nearly as much. The reason why 2 Thundery is good is because you do not want it to be the guaranteed trap card from Balance. One thing that I'm quite uncertain of, as you can see from the decks on the screen, is the number of Necrovalleys to play. The bad thing about playing Necrovalley is that it makes the deck not 100% consistent. As mentioned earlier, if all your spells are continuous spells, if your monsters are just Thunder and Snow and you play Balance, the deck will be 100% consistent. Which then brings up the question of, is it worth breaking this to play Necrovalley? Because drawing Thunder and Valley and no other spells is pretty bad. In my opinion, it is definitely worth it to make this deck a little bit less consistent to play Necrovalley. The weather painted cards by themselves are not enough to consistently defeat meta decks. In the instance of balance, trap cards help a lot with this issue, but given how painters work, you will quite often only have one spell and trap card zone in which to set them. Being a field spell card, Necrovalley kind of covers that issue of not having many free spell and trap card zones. Playing just 1 or 2 Valley is still good because painters search a lot, so you can draw into it quite easily still. That's the approach that I took for the MCS because I did not expect many Witchcrafters, and the MCS I believe was a day after the ban list was revealed. Community events tend to enforce the ban list as soon as it is revealed. For the trap cards in the deck that are not Thundery, I really like Ultimate Providence. This is because Snowy Canvas can search for a monster, spell or trap, so you can essentially negate anything you want. Here is some more information on the trap cards of the deck. The rest of this video will be gameplay from Battle Phase EU, which was the tournament I won, and the MCS. I hope you've enjoyed so far and or found stuff to be useful.
catch you one more time.